"Ma'am, please save my dad," he cried, his voice high-pitched and frantic. It poured relentlessly over Florida that night, washing away the noise, the heat, the light, and nearly a man's life. Jameson Reed Sr., one of the wealthiest tech moguls in the South, sat slumped behind the wheel of his Rolls-Royce, parked crookedly on the shoulder of a dimly lit road just outside Buckhead. His chest was tight, his vision blurred, his breath shallow. He had pulled over minutes earlier, dismissing the dizziness as fatigue, but this was no ordinary exhaustion. In the back seat, his 5-year-old son, Malik Reed Jr., pressed both palms against his father's shoulder. "Daddy, please wake up. Please." No answer, only the rhythmic drumming of rain on metal. The boy's small voice trembled. Tears streamed down the boy's cheeks as he pushed open the door. The wind almost knocked him over, and the rain soaked through his little hoodie in seconds. He didn't know where to go. He just knew someone had to help. A young black woman stood there in a faded grey coat, clutching a small purse to her chest. Alia Morgan, 29, was exhausted after another long shift washing dishes at the diner. She'd once been a nurse, until speaking out against a doctor's abuse cost her license. She looked startled as the boy ran straight to her. "Mom, Mom," he gasped, tugging at her sleeve. "Ma'am, please save my dad. He's not moving. Nummy." Morgan blinked. Her brain needed a second to catch up. "What? What happened?" He fell asleep, I think. "In the car. He won't wake up. I tried calling, but please, he's not breathing right." He tugged at her arm. A shiver ran down Morgan's spine. She hadn't heard those words in almost 3 years, not since she'd been dismissed from county medical for speaking out about malpractice. Since then she'd sworn to keep her head down. But this child, his eyes were pleading in a way that cut deeper than any lawsuit or career loss. "Take me to him," she said. Without another word, the boy turned and ran, and Morgan followed, her sneakers slipping on the slick pavement until they reached the Rolls-Royce. The headlights flickered weakly, illuminating the man inside. His lips were blue. "Stay back, sweetheart," she said gently. "I'll help him." She pulled open the door and laid the man back, checking his airway and pulse. Faint, barely there, she began compressions, counting aloud to steady herself. 1, 2, 3, breathe. "Come on, stay with me." Her soaked sleeves clung to her arms, the storm blurring everything around her. Suddenly, tires screeched behind her. A black Mercedes stopped sharply, and an older woman stepped out. Karen Reed, elegant in a long coat, diamonds glinting even under the rain. The sight that met her eyes made her blood boil, her son limp in a stranger's arms, and that stranger a black woman pressing on his chest. Karen's face twisted in panic and rage. "What are you doing to my son?" she screamed, rushing forward. Morgan turned panting. "Ma'am, he's having a heart attack." "I'm trying to." Before she could finish, Karen's umbrella crashed into her shoulder. "Liar! Get away from him!" The older woman struck again, this time slapping Morgan across the face. The sharp crack was lost beneath the thunder. "Grandma, stop!" Malik Reed Jr. cried from the curb, but she didn't listen. She grabbed Morgan by the coat collar, yanking her backward. "Please let me help him," Morgan gasped, struggling to keep her footing. Her knees hit the wet asphalt, but she pushed forward again. "If I stop, he'll die." Karen shoved her once more, the umbrella handle slamming into Morgan's back. "You people never know your place. Get away." Morgan winced in pain but crawled closer to the car door, eyes locked on the man's still chest. Her voice broke, desperate. "He's not breathing. Please, just let me," the boy screamed. "She's helping Grandma. Daddy needs her." Karen froze for half a second, just long enough for Morgan to seize the moment. She slipped past the older woman and resumed compressions, her palms pressing into the billionaire's chest with steady rhythm, despite her bruised ribs. "Come on," she whispered through clenched teeth. "Don't kid on me now." Rain poured through the open door, drenching them both. Her muscles screamed, but she didn't stop. Then a twitch. A gasp. The man's body jerked slightly under her hands. Morgan leaned close. "That's it. Breathe. Come on, sir. Breathe." Jameson Reed Sr. coughed, water and air forcing their way back into his lungs. His eyes fluttered open, unfocused but alive. Karen dropped the umbrella, her expressions shattering into disbelief. Malik Reed, But before anyone could speak again, red and blue lights flashed through the storm. 2 police cruisers skidded to a stop nearby. Officers jumped out, their flashlights slicing through the rain. One officer grabbed Morgan's arm. "Ma'am, step back now." She saved him. "Malik Reed Jr.?" shouted, running toward them. "She saved my daddy." Karen, still in shock, stammered. She attacked him, I think." "No," Morgan tried to explain breathlessly. He collapsed. "I was giving CPR. I'm a former nurse. Check his pulse. He's alive because—" "Ma'am, that's enough," one officer interrupted, twisting her wrists behind her. The boy cried harder. "Don't take her. She didn't do anything." Morgan met his tearful gaze as they guided her toward the patrol car. Her back ached where she'd been struck. Her face burned, but she forced a small, tired smile. "It's okay, honey," she whispered. "Your daddy's safe now." Behind her, Malik Reed Sr. stirred again, his lips moving weakly as paramedics arrived. The last thing Morgan saw before the cruiser door closed was the boy clutching his father's hand and the older woman standing in the rain, frozen between guilt and disbelief. As the car pulled away, sirens echoing through the wet night, Morgan leaned her head against the cold window. Her body trembled, not from fear, but from the ache of holding on when every instinct said to let go. Sometimes saving a life meant losing your own peace. And somewhere behind her, a billionaire gasped his first breath back into the world, because a woman he'd never met refused to stop. If this moved you, hit like and drop your city in the comments. Who knows? Someone nearby might be watching with you. The patrol car was cold inside, the vinyl seat sticking to Morgan's soaked jeans. Her hands cuffed behind her tingled with numbness. Whether from the cold or adrenaline, she couldn't tell. The rain still pounded against the roof as the vehicle idled beside the scene. Through the fogged window, Morgan could see the flashing ambulance lights now surrounding Rolls-Royce. Paramedics knelt beside Jameson Reed Sr., placing oxygen tubes, checking vitals. He was alive. That should have meant something. But right now, it doesn't mean freedom. The officer in the passenger seat turned to glance at her. His face was unreadable. He was white, maybe in his late 40s with tired eyes and a badge that looked too heavy for his chest. "Name?" he asked. "Alia Morgan," she said quietly, teeth clattering slightly from the cold. He wrote something down. "You got an ID?" "It's in my purse on the sidewalk," she said. "I dropped it when you assaulted the man in the car," he interrupted, not looking at her. Morgan stiffened. "I didn't assault him. I saved his life." "That's not what his mother said. She hit me, pulled me away while I was doing CPR." Morgan snapped, the sting of that moment still fresh on her back. "Look at my shoulder. Look at my face." The officer's pen paused in the middle of his notebook. He looked at her, finally seeing the red handprint still faintly visible on her cheek. "Why would she hit you?" Morgan's throat tightened. She had no clean answer for that. Because she was black. Because she wasn't in a uniform. Because a woman like Karen Reed couldn't imagine a world where a stranger who looked like Morgan would choose to save her son instead of harm him. She didn't speak. The rear door opened. Another officer leaned in taller. "Latino, early 30s. His expression was more alert. "We just got confirmation," he said. "Paramedics say she initiated CPR. The kid confirmed it too. She kept him alive until we got there." The older cop looked over his shoulder at Morgan. "Is that true?" Morgan nodded slowly. "Yes." The younger officer tilted his head slightly. "She used correct technique. The paramedic said her form was textbook. Probably saved the guy. She says she used to be a nurse," the older one muttered. "I still am," Morgan said, lifting her chin. "Just not licensed." "Not anymore." The younger cop gave a tight nod and stepped back from the door. "You want to press charges?" the older officer asked. "No," Morgan said sharply. "But I wanted on the record that I was struck, physically assaulted. I did not fight back. I didn't touch anyone except to save a life." The silence that followed was long. Then, without another word, the older officer opened her door, reached down, and unlocked her cuffs. "You're free to go, Miss Morgan." "Ah." Morgan pulled her arms around to the front, wincing at the stiffness. She stepped out into the rain again, weaker than before. As she walked back toward the scene, Malik Reed Jr. broke away from a paramedic, and ran straight into her legs. "You're not going to jail," he cried, wrapping his arms around her. Morgan crouched slowly despite the ache in her knees. She hugged him back, her voice soft. "No, baby, I'm not. No." Behind them, Karen Reed stood near the ambulance, a wool coat over her shoulders now, expression tight and unreadable. Her eyes landed on Morgan, but this time they didn't burn with rage. They just looked tired, confused, possibly even ashamed. Morgan didn't approach her. She had done her part. The rest wasn't hers to carry. "Miss," a medic waved her over. "We need your information for the hospital report." Morgan nodded, gently letting go of Malik Reed Jr., who still clung to her coat like a lifeline. She gave her name, address, and what remained of her professional credentials. The medic looked surprised when she listed off precise terminology for chest compressions and vitals. "You sure you're not active duty?" he asked with a half-smile. Morgan exhaled. "Not anymore." He jotted it down and handed her a blanket which she wrapped around her shoulders. It smelled like antiseptic and warmth. "Do you have someone who can pick you up?" he asked. Morgan shook her head. "Bus stops down the street." "I'll be fine." Before she could turn to go, a low Horsaro voice rasped from the gurney behind the ambulance doors. Wait, it was Jameson Reed Sr. He had an oxygen mask on, eyes half-litted, but they were trained directly on her. "You," he whispered. "You saved me." Morgan stepped closer, blinking against a fresh wave of rain and disbelief. "I did what I had to do," she said softly. His lips moved again. "Thank you," the medic interrupted. "Sir, we need to get moving." But Malik Reed held up a finger weakly, and his eyes didn't leave Mars. "She didn't hurt me," he said with surprising clarity. "She helped me." Karen flinched behind the medics. Ma said nothing. Her silence this time held the weight of restraint, not fear. The ambulance doors closed with a thud, and the sirens started up again. As the lights faded into the distance, Morgan pulled the blanket tighter around herself. Her whole body felt like it had run through fire and ice, bruised, sore, soaked, but standing. One of the officers approached her again. "If you want to file a formal complaint against the older woman, we can take a statement." Morgan looked down the street, the storm thinning into drizzle. She remembered the boy's tiny hands pulling on her sleeve, the cracked voice begging, "Please save my dad." She shook her head. "Not tonight." He looked surprised. "Are you sure, my anode? Some things are bigger than a slap." He hesitated, then said, "You're a good one, Miss Morgan." "No," she replied. "I'm just stubborn." She walked back to the bus stop, her soaked shoes squishing with every step, and though she was alone again, something inside her had shifted. She had acted on instinct, on skill, on heart, and not once did she regret it. Because when a child begs for a miracle, sometimes you become one without even meaning to. Morgan sat alone at the back of the nearly empty Martha bus. Her body curled into the blanket a medic had given her. The bus hummed low, fluorescent lights flickering above her. The driver hadn't said much when she stepped aboard, only offered a nod and a glance at her muddy shoes. She appreciated the quiet. She didn't have the strength for small talk. The bruises on her back throbbed in sync with the beat of the road beneath the wheels. Each bump sent a dull pain through her shoulders. But that wasn't what hurt most. What lingered was the way Karen Reed's voice had sliced through the rain with venom that felt far older than the moment itself. "She looked at me like I didn't belong." Morgan whispered to no one like I was the danger even when I was saving him. She pulled the blanket tighter. The city passed outside the window in streaks of wet neon and shadow. A familiar blur. This part of Florida. Her part wasn't in the brochures. Cracked sidewalks. Corner stores with metal grates. Graffiti on brick. The kind of place no billionaire ever visited unless they were lost or looking for something they didn't want to admit they needed. Her stop came. She stepped off, shoes squishing against the curb, the wind sharp against her face. A group of men stood under the awning of a liquor store nearby. Arguing about football, one glanced her way, did a double take when he saw the hospital blanket around her shoulders, then looked away. She didn't care. The walk to her building was short, but felt like a mile. She unlocked the front door of the unit she shared with her aunt, a small two-bedroom apartment on the second floor. As she stepped in, the warm scent of peppermint tea and fabric softener met her like an old friend. "Morgan," a voice called from the kitchen. "You're late, baby. You okay?" Her Aunt Loretta appeared in her nightgown, robe tied tight, grey curls tucked into a bonnet. Morgan gave her a tired smile. "I'm okay, Auntie. Just had a long night." Loretta took one look at her face, the faint swelling, the scratch on her temple, and her eyes narrowed. "That ain't a long night, child. That's a fight." Morgan shook her head. It wasn't what it looked like. Loretta crossed her arms. "Then tell me what it was." So Morgan did. She told her everything about the little boy who found her, the man in the car, the CPR, the slap, the cuffs, and the quiet gratitude from a man she'd nearly died saving. Loretta listened, silent and still. When Morgan finished, her aunt exhaled deeply, and they let you walk home after that. "I took the bus." Loretta stared at her. "You should have let me know. You should have called. I didn't want you to worry." "Honey," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Worrying is what I do. It's how I know I still got you, Morgan." Finally, Saturday, her body slumped forward, drained. "I didn't think I'd ever do that again," she said. "Use what I know. Not after what happened at County. You didn't think you'd save someone? I didn't think anyone would let me." Loretta reached for her hand. "You didn't wait for permission, did you?" "No," Morgan whispered. "I just heard the boy's voice. That's all I needed." They sat like that for a long time. No TV, no music, just the quiet creak of pipes and the hum of the fridge. Then Loretta stood. "You need rest. Ice that shoulder. You're going to be sore in the morning." "I already am." Before heading to her room, Loretta paused. "You did right, Morgan." Even if the world's too scared or proud to say so, Morgan nodded, but her eyes stayed on the window, watching the last drops of rain trail down the glass. Her mind drifted back to the boy's face. His desperation, his hope. "He believed me," she thought. That was enough. The next morning, the city woke slowly under grey skies and wet streets. Morgan sat on the couch, a cold pack pressed to her shoulder. Flipping through local news on her phone, she scrolled past headlines until one froze her hand mid-wipe. "Billionaire saved by stranger after medical emergency identity unknown." She tapped it open. A blurry photo taken from a distance showed the Rolls-Royce, the ambulance, and police tape. No names yet, but the comments were already flooding in. Bet it was staged. Probably someone trying to get a lawsuit or payout. Looks like another scam. I hope that woman didn't hurt him. Morgan swallowed hard. Even without being named, she was already under suspicion. She turned off the screen. Later that afternoon, as she sorted laundry, her phone rang from the kitchen counter. Unknown number. She hesitated, then answered, "Miss Morgan." A man's voice said, "This is Dr. Gabriel from Florida Regional. I was the attending physician last night when Mr. Jameson Reed Sr. was admitted." "Yes, doctor," she said cautiously. "I wanted to reach out personally," he said. "Mr. Reed is stable now, and he insisted we contact you." Morgan's breath caught. "Is he all right?" "He's recovering well thanks to your early intervention. In fact," he said his exact words, "she's the reason I'm here." She sat down slowly. Her legs had started shaking. "I know this must have been traumatic," the doctor continued, "but I hope you'll consider coming by. Mr. Reed wants to speak with you when you're ready." Morgan looked at the calendar on the wall. The date glared back at her. The anniversary of the day she was fired from the county. She closed her eyes. "I'll come," she said. "Tell him I'll come." The hospital lobby smelled like bleach and resignation. Morgan paused at the automatic doors before stepping in. Her reflection briefly caught in the glass. The purple-blue bruise on her cheek had started to fade, but was still visible under light makeup. She wore her best shirt, a modest blouse she'd ironed 3 times that morning, and her cleanest jeans. It was the most dignity she could afford. At the check-in desk, a nurse with a cheery badge and tired eyes glanced up. "Name, Alia Morgan," she said, her voice firmer than she expected. "I'm here to see Mr. Jameson Reed Sr. The nurse blinked, clearly recognizing the name, and typed something quickly. "Room 718. He's expecting you." Then after a pause, "I think he'll be glad you came." Morgan gave a faint nod and made her way toward the elevator, her shoes clicking softly on the tile. As the doors closed around her, she exhaled slowly. It had been 3 days since that night. 3 days of bruises and silence, and too many phone calls from news reporters who somehow found her number. She hadn't answered a single one. But this was different. Room 718 was on the corner with a view of the city skyline stretching toward the horizon. Morgan stood at the threshold for a moment. The door is already open. The man in the bed was propped up slightly, ivy lines taped to his arm, color slowly returning to his cheeks. Jameson Reed Sr. looked smaller than she remembered. Not weak, just real. No suits, no headlines, just a man recovering from the edge of death. He turned when he heard the rustle of her shoes. His eyes met hers, calmer now, clearer. "Alia Morgan," he said, voice, but strong. "I was hoping you'd come. I wasn't sure I should. I'm glad you did." She stepped in, unsure whether to shake his hand, bow her head, or just stand there. He sensed it. "You can sit, please." There was a visitor's chair beside the bed, clean and unoccupied. She took it. Neither of them spoke for a moment. Malik Reed broke the silence. "They told me everything. The doctors, my son, the paramedics. I owe you my life." Morgan folded her hands in her lap. "I didn't do it for a thank you. I know. That's what makes it harder to say." She looked at him, then really looked, and found no smugness, no entitlement, just a man who had nearly died, trying to grasp what had happened. "Why did you help me?" he asked, his tone sincere, not suspicious. Morgan hesitated. "Because your son asked me to, and because I knew what to do." His eyes softened. "My mother, she told me what she did, what she thought." Morgan sat up straighter, the tension returning. "I'm not pressing charges. If that's what you're worried about, I'm not," he said quickly. "I mean, I wouldn't blame you if you did, but no, that's not what this is about." He reached for the cup of water on his tray, his hands slightly shaking. Morgan instinctively stood to help, but stopped herself. "I've spent a lot of my life in control," he said, sipping carefully. "Running companies, investments, buying influence. I always assumed I could fix anything with a phone call." He set the cup down, but lying on that sidewalk, gasping like a fish, and seeing you over me, taking hits just to keep me alive. That broke something I didn't know needed breaking. Morgan didn't know what to say. Her chest tightened. It continued. "I've asked myself, what would have happened if someone else had found me? Would they have walked past, filmed me, left me to die? And the truth is, I don't know. But you didn't." "I couldn't," Morgan said quietly. "That boy." He looked at me like I was the only hope left. "You were." He looked down at the IV in his arm. "You still are." There was a knock at the door. Both turned to see Karen Reed standing at the threshold, holding a small bouquet of white lilies. She stepped in slowly, her eyes avoiding Mars for a full 5 seconds before she finally forced them up. "Morgan," she said, her voice trembling. "I'd like to speak to you if you'll allow it." Morgan stood, her fingers tightening on the chair. "I don't need an apology," she said, measured. "What I needed was a chance to save someone without being treated like a threat." Karen nodded once, her face pale. "And you did. You saved my son. I would have saved anyone. I know that now." Morgan studied her. There was no arrogance in her voice anymore, just something fragile like regret. Malik Reed watched quietly, letting the two women navigate what couldn't be undone. Karen stepped closer, gently set the flowers on the windowsill. "I was wrong," she said. "Blinded by fear, by old wounds that had nothing to do with you, and I hurt you when you were doing the most selfless thing anyone's ever done for this family." Morgan didn't speak. Her silence was more eloquent than any response. "If there's any way I can make it right," Morgan finally responded, "start by teaching your grandson what courage really looks like. Because he was brave. He chose trust when everyone else chose fear." Karen swallowed hard and nodded. Then, quietly, she turned and left the room. The silence that followed felt cleaner somehow, like something had been cleared out. Painful, but necessary. Malik Reed smiled faintly. "You're not like anyone I've ever met," Morgan exhaled. "Good." He laughed only a little because it still hurt. "You'll come back, right? Let my son thank you properly." "I don't know," she said. "Maybe." Can I call you? Morgan smiled for the first time. That depends. Are you going to ask for investment advice? He chuckled again, this time softer. No, I just want to hear your voice without dying first. She turned to leave, but before she reached the door, Malik Reed called after her. Morgan. Yeah, thank you for saving me and not letting them stop you. She nodded. Next time, she said, just stay alive without all the drama. Morgan didn't sleep that night. She tried. She lay in bed, the ceiling fan circling overhead, the hum of the refrigerator leaking from the kitchen like a slow, dull metronome. But her eyes wouldn't close, and when they did, her mind ran faster than her body could rest. The conversation with Jameson Reed Sr. echoed in her head, his voice calm, fragile, grateful. And Karen Reed's apology, stiff and trembling, like a chair with uneven legs. It felt real. But even reality didn't erase bruises, not the ones under her skin or in her history. Morgan stared at the ceiling and thought about what it meant to be seen for the first time. Not as a threat or a mistake or a cautionary tale, but as a healer, a protector. She hadn't worn a nurse's uniform in nearly 3 years, but for 9 minutes on a stormy sidewalk with nothing but her hands and her instinct, she had been exactly what she used to be, maybe even more. She finally rose just after 5 a.m., tugged on a hoodie, and stepped outside. The morning air was cool, washed clean by the storm. She walked a few blocks to her favorite coffee spot, a little local joint called Deacon's Brew, where the staff knew her order and never rushed her. The owner, a bald man in his 60 named Glenn, nodded as she entered. Early today, he said, couldn't sleep. He didn't ask why, just poured her regular strong black coffee with a splash of oat milk and a pinch of cinnamon. She sat by the window and stared at the world slowly waking up mail trucks, joggers, buses, high school kids with backpacks too heavy for their posture. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. You saved my father. I hope you'll let me see you again soon. Malik Reed Jr., with some help from Grandma typing. Morgan smiled despite herself. She typed back a simple, You're very brave. Tell your dad I said hello. She pocketed the phone and tried to sip the rest of her coffee, but a voice broke her thoughts. You, Alia Morgan? She turned. A man stood near her table. Early 42, white with sharp eyes and a press badge on a lanyard around his neck. I'm Adam Fielder. I work with Channel 8 News. She straightened. I'm not interested in interviews. I'm not asking for one. Just wanted to say I saw the paramedic report. I know you saved him. I also know how they treated you after. Morgan gave a tight nod. You're about the 10th reporter to find me. Why are you different? Because I'm not here for a headline. I'm here for the truth. You didn't ask for any of this attention. And still, you stepped up. I think people need to hear that. She eyed him carefully. Why? So you can spin it into a feel-good piece and boost your ratings. No, he said, so they remember what justice actually looks like, what it feels like. Morgan didn't speak. He pulled a card from his wallet, slid it across the table. When you're ready to talk, not before. Then he left. She stared at the card for a long time, unsure whether to tear it up or tuck it away. In the end, she slipped it into her purse. Later that afternoon, as she folded laundry back at the apartment, Aunt Loretta stepped in from the hallway with a slightly suspicious expression. Are you expecting company? Morgan frowned. No. Then you better come to the door. She wiped her hands and followed. A tall man stood at the threshold, broad shoulders, pressed shirt, a familiar quiet in his gaze. Jameson Reed Sr. Alive and walking. Hope this isn't too forward, he said. But I had my assistant find your address. You're recovering. You shouldn't be moving around like this. The doctor cleared me. Said fresh air would help. So would closure. Morgan stepped aside and let him in. Loretta offered coffee, but Malik Reed politely declined. He sat on the edge of the couch like he didn't quite believe he was welcome. I needed to see where you came from, he said. Where you went back to hand. It's humble but steady like you. Morgan crossed her arms. You're not here just to compliment my furniture. No, Malik Reed admitted. I'm here to make an offer, she bristled. If this is a reward, I'm not interested. It's not a reward, he said quickly. It's a proposal. A real one. I run a foundation in my wife's name. It supports medical scholarships, especially for women of color. I want to sponsor you fully. Back to school, license, everything. Morgan stared. Why me? Because you didn't just save me. You did it while being dragged, hit, doubted, and you still didn't stop. That kind of heart skill, Grace. It's rare. I don't want pity. It's not a pity, Malik Reed said. It's respect, and a little bit of selfishness. I want the woman who saved my life to help save others again. Morgan looked away, jaw tight. You think you can just walk into my life and fix everything with a scholarship? No, he said quietly. But I can try to repair what people like me helped break. She let that sit in the air for a long time, then softly, I haven't worn a white coat in years. Maybe it's time you wore one again. Malik Reed stood, adjusting his jacket. Think about it. Take your time. You don't owe me anything, but maybe you owe it to yourself. He handed her a folder thick with paperwork, details, and the foundation's seal. Then he left, not waiting for applause or thanks. Morgan didn't open the folder until after sunset. She sat at the kitchen table, flipped it open, and stared at the words. Full academic re-entry, tuition, materials, housing support if needed, letter from the board. Alia Morgan is a candidate of exceptional resilience and integrity. She touched the paper like it might disappear, and for the first time in a long time she cried. Morgan stood outside the campus of Emory University School of Nursing, staring through the iron gate as students buzzed in and out of buildings, backpacks slung over shoulders, coffee cups in hand, lives in forward motion. The chill of early spring clung to the air, but the trees were starting to bloom. Soft whites and pinks stretching toward the Georgia sky like they'd forgotten winter ever happened. She tightened her grip on the admissions envelope. Her name was printed cleanly on the top, Morgan Nicole Morgan. Below it, in elegant lettering, is a full scholarship awarded by the Lillian Reed Foundation for Medical Excellence. 3 weeks had passed since Jameson Reed Sr. handed her that folder. She hadn't said yes immediately. She wasn't ready. The pain from that night had started to fade, but the weight of what it meant hadn't. Accepting the scholarship felt like crossing a bridge she didn't build. And yet, here she was. She stepped through the gate, her steps measured, her heart heavier than she let on. The campus was beautiful, yes, but it also reminded her of what she'd lost, of who she'd been before that night at County Medical when her license had been suspended, her reputation buried under bureaucracy and cowardice. But Malik Reed's words rang in her ears. Maybe it's time you wore the coat again. She entered the admissions building and followed the signs toward the orientation office. Inside, a secretary greeted her politely, handed her a schedule, a student ID, and a packet with information she already knew by heart. Then came the moment the woman reached beneath the desk and pulled out a folded, pressed, brand-new white coat. A name tag was already stitched onto it. M. Morgan. Student. RN. Welcome back, Miss Morgan, the secretary said with a kind smile. Looks good on you. Morgan took it with both hands. It felt heavier than it looked. Not just fabric, but years of doubt, anger, grief, hope, the weight of return. She didn't try it on just yet. Instead, she walked out of the building and found a quiet bench near a fountain. She sat there for a long while, coat in her lap, watching students laugh and share notes and complain about professors, normal things she'd missed. Her phone buzzed. A text from Loretta. Proud of you. Don't you dare back out now. Then another from an unfamiliar number. Hi, it's Malik Reed Jr. Dad says you're a nurse again. I told him you never stopped being one. Morgan smiled. Her thumb hovered over the reply button when another text came in. P.S. Will you come over for dinner sometime? Dad's cooking. He says it's safe now. She chuckled. But before she could reply, a voice cut through her thoughts. Well, if it isn't Florida's miracle worker. She turned. Adam Fielder, the reporter from Channel 8, stood a few feet away, hands in his pockets, camera bags slung across his shoulder. She tensed. I didn't agree to an interview. Zoe, I'm not here for that, he said quickly. Promise? I was meeting a contact in the next building. Saw you through the window. She raised an eyebrow. So, you decided to come say hi? I did, and to give you this. He pulled a folded piece of paper from his jacket. It was a printed copy of an article. The title read, When Courage Isn't Convenient, the Alia Morgan Story. I didn't run it, he said. My editor approved it. I pulled it. Morgan blinked. Why? Because I realized it wasn't mine to tell yet. Not without you. She looked at him surprised. Most reporters wouldn't care. I do, he said. I saw something that night, something bigger than headlines. I saw a woman do what no one else would. And then I saw people try to twist it. That story deserves better than a news cycle. He placed the article beside her on the bench. If you ever want to tell it on your terms, I'll be here. No rush, no pressure. Morgan nodded slowly. Thank you. Adam turned to go, then paused. You really going back into medicine? I am, she said, lifting the coat from her lap. One class at a time. Good, he said. Florida needs you, even if it doesn't know it yet. When he left, Morgan finally stood, unfolded the white coat, and slid it over her shoulders. It didn't feel like redemption, it felt like reclaiming. That evening, back at the apartment, Loretta made cornbread and greens. Because comfort food is holy, she said. Morgan sat at the kitchen table, coat still on, flipping through textbooks already dough-geared and highlighted. You look like you never left. Loretta smiled, watching her from across the room. I feel like I'm just getting started. A knock came at the door. Loretta raised an eyebrow. Are you expecting someone? Morgan shook her head and opened it. Standing there, holding a small bouquet of sunflowers and a nervous grin, was Malik Reed Jr. He wore a tie much too big for him. Behind him stood Malik Reed Sr. holding a casserole dish awkwardly in both hands. We brought dinner, Malik Reed Sr. said. Malik Reed cooked. I stirred. The boy corrected proudly. Morgan stood there stunned. Loretta peeked over Morgan's shoulder. Well, don't just let the food get cold. Come on in. As the boy rushed in, trailing the scent of baked cheese and something vaguely Italian, Morgan looked at Malik Reed Sr. I didn't say yes to dinner yet. I know, he said. I was hoping you'd say yes with your appetite. She stared at him a moment longer, then stepped aside. Fine, she said. But if it's awful, I'm walking out with the pan. He laughed. Inside, the lights were warm. The food was real, and for the first time in years, Morgan felt something she hadn't let herself feel. Home. The casserole was surprisingly decent. Not great. Malik Reed Jr. had gone heavy on the oregano, and the top layer of cheese had singed in one corner. But it was warm, filling, and more importantly, made with the kind of care that didn't come from recipes. Morgan sat at the dinner table, still in her white coat, the scent of baked pasta mingling with the subtle lavender of Loretta's plug-in air freshener. Malik Reed Jr. had already finished his first plate and was working on seconds, talking animatedly about how he wanted to be a scientist and also a fireman and also maybe a heart doctor like the one who helped Daddy. Malik Reed Sr. chuckled quietly at his son's ambitions. Multitasker, he said. Morgan gave him a sidelong look. Didn't think billionaires made casseroles. I didn't, he replied mock, whispering. But I watched a woman on YouTube do it twice. I, Loretta, seated across from them, let out a soft laugh. You're not half bad for a man with 5 assistants. Only 4 now, Malik Reed said. One quit after I asked her to organize my spice rack. The conversation was light flowing easily in the small apartment, but under the laughter, under the clinking of forks and the stories from a 5-year-old boy with more energy than sense, Morgan felt a tension building, not the uncomfortable kind, but the kind that signaled something was coming, something she'd have to face. She felt it most when Malik Reed Sr. grew quiet. You all right? She asked him. He nodded slowly. I've been thinking about everything. That covers a lot of ground. He set his fork down, looked directly at her. I thought I understood how the world worked, who I could trust, what danger looked like. Morgan stayed silent, letting him get there on his own. But that night, the way you fought to save me, even while being hit, pulled, doubted, he swallowed. You didn't stop. She leaned back. I didn't have time to second guess it. If I'd hesitated, you'd be dead. Most people would have walked away. Maybe, she said. But your son didn't let me. Malik Reed Jr. piped up with a mouthful of cornbread. She's a real hero, Daddy, like the ones in the movies. Morgan smiled at him. Heroes usually don't have bruised ribs and overdue rent, kiddo. You can have both, he replied confidently. The moment lingered. Then came the knock at the door. 3 sharp raps. Loretta stood wary. Are you expecting someone else? Morgan shook her head. Malik Reed Sr. tensed subtly. She moved to the door cautiously and opened it. Standing there was a woman in a beige coat, mid-40s, sharp red lipstick and eyes that had seen a lot. She flashed a press badge. Miss Morgan, I'm Ruth Rost from the Florida Register. I was hoping for a moment of your time. Morgan didn't hide her irritation. How did you find me? Ruth didn't flinch, the same way every good story finds its source. Persistence and a little help from someone who thinks your voice matters. Adam Fielder. Ruth offered the slightest nod. Malik Reed Sr. appeared behind Morgan. His posture changed the second he saw Ruth. Miss Roston, he said, voice cool. I believe you've already received our statement through legal. I have, she replied. But I'm not here for you, Mr. Carter. I'm here for her. She turned back to Morgan. May I come in? Morgan stared at her a moment, then stepped aside. Ruth entered, took one look at Loretta's living room. Small, neat, decorated with framed Bible verses and a wall clock shaped like a rooster, and sat carefully on the edge of the floral couch. I'm not here to dig dirt, Ruth began. But people need to hear the truth from you. Morgan crossed her arms. And what truth is that? That I performed CPR while being yanked and slapped? That I was treated like a criminal until your storybook Billionaire vouched for me? Ruth stayed calm. The public doesn't know the details. They know whispers, internet threads, speculation. You were cast as a threat before they even knew your name. Morgan's jaw tightened. I'm giving you the chance to tell it your way, Ruth continued unfiltered. Your voice, your words, not mine. Malik Reed Sr. stepped in, his tone firm. If this is about spinning the story for clicks, it's not, Ruth interrupted. Frankly, it doesn't need spinning. The facts are enough. Morgan looked from Ruth to Malik Reed, then to Loretta, who stood in the kitchen doorway with a dish towel in hand and concern in her eyes. Finally, Morgan spoke. What would I even say? Ruth smiled. Not the kind you give for charm, but one that said thank you for not shutting the door. You'd say what happened, that you were afraid, that you acted anyway, that you didn't expect gratitude but didn't deserve suspicion, that sometimes when a child begs you to save his father, you don't stop to ask who he is, you just do it. The silence that followed was thick. Malik Reed Jr., unbothered by adult tension, leaned toward Morgan and whispered, You should tell them. You're braver than anyone. She looked at Ruth. One interview, my terms, one version, the truth. Ruth nodded. That's all I ever ask you. As the reporter left, Morgan sat back down at the table, her appetite gone, but her resolve sharpened. Malik Reed Sr. looked at her. Are you sure about this? No, Morgan said, but I'm tired of letting other people write my story for me. She stood, glanced at the white coat still hanging on the chair, and added softly, It's time they heard the whole truth, even if it hurts. The lights in the small recording studio were soft but focused. No flashing bulbs, no makeup artists, just a single camera, a table, 2 microphones, and Ma's folded hands resting calmly in front of her. Ruth Roston sat across from her, dressed in muted navy, notepad open, but barely used. She'd already done the background work. What she wanted now was truth, not trivia. The video was being filmed for a segment titled One Night, One Choice. It would air in a week, but Morgan had final approval before it saw daylight. Still, the red recording light glared like judgment. You ready? Ruth asked gently. Morgan didn't nod. She simply looked up and began speaking. I was waiting for a bus when he found me. Just a little boy, soaking wet, barely old enough to tie his own shoes. He looked at me with these wide eyes and said, Ma'am, please save my dad. That was it. No explanation, no warning, just a plea. She paused. The words hung in the air like the moment itself. I followed him to the car. His father was slumped over the wheel, cold, not breathing right. I checked his pulse and started CPR. I didn't have a medical bag or gloves or a team, just my hands and my memory. Kemi didn't interrupt. May I continued, her voice steady but soft. I used to be a nurse, trained, certified. I lost that license after speaking up against someone with more power than me. They called it insubordination. I called it integrity. Her fingers curled slightly on the table. That night, none of that mattered. I saw a man dying, and I chose to fight for him. I didn't ask who he was. I didn't know he was a billionaire. I didn't know his last name or his politics. All I knew was his child was watching. She swallowed, her jaw tightening. And then his mother arrived. She paused again, not for drama, but to keep her emotions from spilling. She saw a black woman leaning over her son and assumed the worst. She screamed. "She hit me." She pulled me away from him. I tried to explain, but she didn't listen. The camera didn't flinch, and neither did Ruth. I went back anyway because the man was dying and I was the only one who knew how to stop it. So I did. Even while being accused, even while being struck, even when the cops arrived and cuffed me without asking a single question, her voice caught slightly but didn't break. I didn't do it for applause or forgiveness. I did it because life is sacred, and because that child looked at me like I mattered. She leaned forward now, tone shifting slightly. We talk about justice in this country like it's a thing to be found in courts and laws. But sometimes justice is just a woman doing the right thing in the dark, even when no one believes her. Especially then. Ruth sat back. The silence afterward wasn't awkward. It was earned. "Thank you, Morgan." She said, "That's all I needed." Morgan nodded. Later that evening, the raw footage was sent to her phone. She watched it alone at the kitchen table. Earbuds in, the lights low. When the part came where she described being struck, she instinctively rubbed her shoulder. The bruises are mostly gone now, but their memory is sharp. She didn't cry. Not this time. Instead, she clicked, "Approve," and sent it back. The segment aired the following Sunday night. It opened with a still shot of the Royce under rain, emergency lights flashing in the background. Ruth's voice narrated, but the heartbeat of the piece was Morgan's own words. Within minutes of airing, it went viral. Not because it was dramatic, not because it was political, but because it was honest. On Monday morning, Morgan's inbox was full. Messages from nurses who'd been pushed out of hospitals, women who had survived discrimination in silence, strangers thanking her for her courage. A doctor from Boston offered her a mentorship program. A civil rights attorney offered to reopen her license case Pruno. Even more surprising, a letter arrived, handwritten in elegant script. "Dear Miss Morgan, I watched your interview for the first time. I didn't see a threat. I saw grace. I'm ashamed of how I treated you. I'm working on that. Thank you for showing my grandson what true strength looks like." Karen Reed Morgan read it 3 times, then folded it and tucked it into her journal. At the hospital, Malik Reed Sr. met her at the front lobby with 2 cups of coffee. "I saw it," he said. She nodded, taking one. "You okay with what I said?" I was relieved. They walked through the lobby slowly. "You weren't just telling your truth," he said. "You were telling mine too, and that scares me in a good way." She smiled. "You'll get used to it." He looked at her. "Serious? You changed everything, Morgan. You didn't just save my life. You made me look at it differently." "That's not my job," she replied. "No," he said, "but maybe it's your gift." As they passed the reception desk, a young black nurse caught Morgan's eye. "Miss Morgan," the nurse said. Ma turned. "I just wanted to say thank you for giving all of us permission to not keep quiet anymore." Morgan's throat tightened. She gave a small, respectful nod. "Thank you for saying that." When they stepped outside, the sun was setting in gold behind the skyline. Malik Reed Jr. ran ahead, chasing a pigeon, laughing. "You're not going to disappear again, right?" Malik Reed Sr. asked. "No," Ma said. "I've spent enough time being invisible." And as the city exhaled behind them, the woman, once accused, once silenced, once bruised, walked forward with her shoulders square and her voice finally her own. Jameson Reed Sr. stared out the 12th floor window of Reed Financial Group, his gaze fixed on the skyline he once thought he owned. The morning sun gleamed off the high-rise glass, but his mind wasn't on quarterly reports or IPOs. His thoughts were still back at Ma's kitchen table, and on the broadcast that had shaken the city just days earlier. The boardroom behind him buzzed quietly. 6 directors shuffled papers, cleared throats, exchanged wary glances. Malik Reed had called this emergency meeting with no agenda. That alone unsettled them. Billionaires didn't do surprises. Not in business. When he finally turned to face them, his voice was calm but clipped. "We need to talk about legacy." That got their attention. "Legacy?" barked Raymond Clean, head of strategy, early 60 seconds with a watch worth more than some small cars. "Sir, with all due respect, we have to address the stockholder fallout from the Channel 8 segment first." "I am addressing it," Malik Reed replied evenly. "Alia Morgan is our legacy now. Or rather, how we respond to her is." Murmurs rippled across the table. "Are you suggesting we issue a public statement?" asked one director. "No," Malik Reed said. "I'm suggesting we act. No press stunt, no damage control, actual reform." The CFO, a younger man named Garrett, frowned. "What does that mean in practical terms?" Malik Reed stepped forward. "It means we evaluate every division where unconscious bias may have influenced hiring, discipline, or promotion. It means funding scholarships not just through our foundation, but embedded into company policy. And it means re-examining our own board diversity starting today." Raymond leaned forward. "This is about guilt, isn't it?" "No," Malik Reed said. "It's about truth and courage, something a woman without a dollar to her name showed more of than most of us combined." Someone whispered, "He's serious." Malik Reed looked around the room. No longer the tired man in a hospital bed, but the one who built an empire brick by brick. His voice dropped lower. "You think this is charity?" "It's not. It's a correction. It's justice that's long overdue, and it's profitable. You want the public to trust us? Show them why they should." For a moment, no one dared speak. Then slowly, one hand clapped. It was Lois Peter, the company's chief legal counsel. She was one of the few women and the only black woman on the executive team. "That's the first time in years I've heard this board talk about doing something instead of covering something." Malik Reed nodded to her. "Would you lead the internal audit?" "With pleasure," she said. "And, for the record, about damn time." Meanwhile, across town, Morgan stood outside the old clinic on Peachtree Road. It had once been a vibrant community health center, but the funding had dried up years ago, and it shut down like so many others serving low-income families. Today, though, a new sign was going up. The Alia Morgan Community Care Center opening soon. She couldn't believe it. Not because she didn't dream of something like it, but because it had actually happened. The funding, a combination of Reed Foundation backing, and a wave of donations that poured in after the interview, aired some large, most small, many anonymous notes had accompanied some. "My daughter is alive because a nurse like you didn't give up. You reminded me why I joined medicine in the first place. Thank you for protecting our sons when no one else did." Inside, walls were being painted, exam tables delivered. Morgan walked through the space, clipboard in hand, greeting volunteers, answering questions. Her white coat now had the Sense name embroidered over her heart. Loretta followed close behind, carrying a tray of lemonade. "Feels real now, doesn't it?" she asked. "It does," Morgan said. "And a little terrifying." "You've fought worse," Morgan smiled. "That's the problem. I'm starting to get used to fighting." Loretta handed her a cup. "Well, fight smart this time. This place isn't just a clinic. It's a symbol. They'll come for it." "I know," Morgan said quietly, "but they'll have to go through me." That night at the Reed estate, Malik Reed Sr. sat in his study, sipping a glass of tea instead of bourbon. His son was asleep upstairs, his mother silent somewhere down the hall, still processing everything. The door creaked open. Karen Reed stood there, her posture stiff. "I watched the dedication," she said. Malik Reed waited. She named it after herself. She earned that right. Karen looked at him, the steel in her spine slowly softening. "She reminds me of your wife." Malik Reed blinked. "How?" "Lillian never waited for permission either." There was silence between them. "She'll be attacked," Karen said. "You know that by those who don't want change." "I'll protect her," Malik Reed replied. Karen stepped closer. "No, you'll stand beside her. Not above. Not in front. Beside." Then she turned and left the room. Malik Reed sat there a long time, staring at the dying fire. The world was shifting, and this time he wasn't resisting. He was finally helping it turn. It started with a broken window. Morgan got the call just after 3 a.m. Her phone vibrated angrily on the nightstand, dragging her out of the first deep sleep she'd had in weeks. She answered on instinct. Her voice. "This is Morgan. Miss Morgan, it's Sergeant Holden with Florida PD. You might want to come down to the clinic." Her heart dropped. "What happened?" "There's been a break-in. Looks like vandalism. No injuries, but you'll want to see it yourself." She was already out of bed, pulling on jeans and a hoodie. Loretta sat up groggy from the couch where she'd fallen asleep, watching late-night game shows. "What is it?" "Can Morgan say?" Someone broke in. 10 minutes later, headlights cut through the parking lot as Morgan's car pulled up to a scene of red and blue flashing lights. Officers milled around with notepads and gloves, and yellow tape was stretched across the glass doors of the Alia Morgan Community Care Center. Her chest tightened as she stepped out. The front window had been shattered inward. Glass shards scattered across the sidewalk. Spray paint slashed across the brick facade in ugly black letters. "Stay in your place." Not a hero. White lives matter too. Morgan stood there, expression blank, but her breath hitched. She didn't flinch, didn't scream, didn't cry, but something inside her cracked. Sergeant Holden approached. He was an older black officer, seasoned, respectful. "We think it happened about 40 minutes ago. No cameras were working yet. The electrician was scheduled for Thursday. We'll canvass the area, get statements," but they knew what they were doing. Morgan finished for him. He gave a grim nod. Loretta arrived a few minutes later, still tying her scarf, eyes wide as she took in the damage. Morgan's voice was still. "Did they get inside?" "No," the officer said. "We think they were making a statement." "Well," Morgan muttered. "So am I." By 9 a.m., the story had already made the news. A drone clip of the vandalism ran on 3 local stations. Talk shows, lit up with hot takes. Some hailed Morgan as a symbol of unity attacked by hate, while others questioned whether all the attention had made her a target or even implied she brought it on herself. Adam Fielder called. "I can help you frame a statement if you want." "I don't need to reframe what they did," Morgan said, "but you can film what I'm going to do next." Within hours, a press conference was organized in front of the still damaged building. Morgan stood behind a podium flanked by 2 clinic staffers and Loretta at her side. No teleprompter, no prepared speech. She spoke from somewhere deeper. "I stood here just a few days ago and told the world I was ready to serve again, ready to heal again. And last night, someone or some people decided to remind me that healing isn't welcome by all." She gestured to the vandalism, now half covered by tarp. They tried to silence a place built for care, for broken bodies, for exhausted mothers, for scared children, for the uninsured, for the forgotten. They thought if they used fear, I'd walk away. She stepped forward, voice rising. "Well, here I am, not walking, standing because this building isn't just brick and glass. It's a promise. And I don't break promises." Reporters snapped photos furiously. "I won't be intimidated. I won't be erased. And for every message they spray-painted, I've got one for them. M." She pulled out a white sign from beneath the podium. In bold black marker it read, "This is my place." The crowd erupted. Some cried, some clapped. Some simply stood in stunned silence, watching a woman not just refuse to flinch, but declare war on silence. That night, Malik Reed Sr. arrived unannounced. Morgan was cleaning up papers in the clinic's back office. Her knuckles still scraped from helping board up the window. "I saw the press conference," Malik Reed said. "You were magnificent." End quote. She didn't look up. "It shouldn't have to be this hard." "No, it shouldn't. But it is, and that's why you matter." He walked further in, set down a manila folder on her desk. "What's this?" she asked. "Security proposals. We'll install surveillance, reinforce the glass, set up motion lights quietly, discreetly, but effectively." Morgan paused. "Is this coming from Reed Financial?" "No," he said. "It's coming from me." She looked up finally, eyes tired but resolute. "Thank you." He stepped closer. "Morgan, I know you didn't ask for this spotlight. You didn't ask to be the face of anything, but the truth is your strength is the story, and it's the one they'll keep trying to stop." "I'm not a martyr," she said. "I'm just tired of running." Malik Reed nodded. "Then let them do the running." There was a quiet beat between them. "Malik Reed," Morgan said softly. "Do you ever wish things were simpler all the time?" he replied. "But then I remember simplicity never changed anything." The next morning, Morgan returned to the clinic to find something waiting on the door. Someone had scrawled on a large white poster board in blue ink, "She saved a life. She gave us hope. You can't silence the truth." Underneath were nearly 100 signatures. Morgan didn't need to ask where they came from. The neighborhood had spoken and the message was clear. This story wasn't over. It was just heating up. It had been a week since the break-in, and Morgan was back in her rhythm, if you could call it that. Long days at the clinic, night classes at Emory, paperwork, patient charts, grant applications, board meetings. There were moments she barely remembered to eat, but the ache in her back was proof of progress. She wore it like armor. Still, she hadn't forgotten the feeling. That strange chill she felt every time she turned off the lights at night, like something was watching. On Thursday evening, Loretta called her into the front lobby. "You've got a visitor." Morgan looked up from her desk, rubbing her temple. "I'm not in the mood for more cameras." "Not a reporter," Loretta said, voice quiet. "It's a man. Says he used to work with Malik Reed Sr." That made Ma pause when she entered the lobby. The man was standing near the window. Tall, early 52nds, expensive coat, slicked hair, briefcase clutched like it held secrets. Something about him didn't sit right. He smiled, but it didn't touch his eyes. "Miss Morgan," he said. "Pleasure to meet you. My name is Nathan Voss." Morgan didn't shake his hand. "What can I do for you, Mr. Voss?" "I'm here as a friend of the Reed family. Malik Reed and I go back decades. College. In fact, Morgan raised an eyebrow. He never mentioned you." "Well," Nathan said with a thin smile, "not every chapter is worth rereading." She said nothing. "I heard about the vandalism," he continued. "Unfortunate, but predictable. You've stirred quite a bit of attention, not all of it the good kind." Morgan crossed her arms. "If you're here to tell me to back down, don't bother. I've been threatened by better." He chuckled. "I admire the fire truly, but I'm here to offer perspective. Try me." Nathan stepped closer, lowering his voice. "There are people, powerful people, who feel this whole hero-nurse narrative is dangerous, and that it sets a precedent. It's making certain donors nervous, especially as Reed Financial moves toward expansion." "And what does my clinic have to do with their wallets?" "Everything," he said simply. "You've become a symbol, Miss Morgan, and symbols are hard to control. When you speak, people listen. When you stand, others follow, and that makes men like me uncomfortable." Morgan's jaw tightened. "Good." Nathan chuckled again, but there was no warmth in it. "I'm not your enemy," he said. "But I'm also not here to lose." "Then you shouldn't have come," Morgan replied. There was a pause. Then his voice dropped even lower. "You know, reputations are fragile. One wrong story, one slip of the tongue, one old record, and people start asking questions. Are you sure you want that kind of scrutiny?" Morgan stared at him, and then slowly she walked over to the reception counter, picked up a laminated flyer that read, "No one silences care. No one buries the truth." She held it out to him. "Put this on your fridge," she said. "That way you don't forget who you're dealing with." Nathan took it with a smirk. "I see why Malik Reed likes you." "I'm not here to be liked," she said. "I'm here to build, and I don't scare easily." He turned to leave. "Be careful, Miss Morgan. You're not just challenging the system. You're threatening it." She watched him exit, the door clicking shut behind him like a final warning. That evening, Malik Reed Sr. called. "I just got word Nathan showed up at your clinic." Morgan didn't hold back. "You want to tell me why a man with a villain name just threatened to ruin me?" Malik Reed sighed. "Nathan is part of the old guard. He was my father's right hand for years, a master at protecting our interests, even if it meant burning bridges. He's not subtle. No, but he's not stupid either. If he came to you, it means the pressure's building." Morgan rubbed her forehead. "I'm not backing down, Malik Reed." I'm not asking you to," he said firmly. "But I am asking you to be careful. They won't just attack your reputation. They'll attack your funding, your building, your people. I'm used to fighting with nothing." "I know," he said quietly. "But now you have something, and that's what they're afraid of." There was a long pause. "Do you regret pulling me out of that car?" he asked softly. She closed her eyes. "No, but I regret that doing the right thing made me a target." "Oh, you're not alone anymore, Morgan," and that makes them the target. Now, 2 nights later, she found a white envelope slid under her door. No name, no return address. Inside, a photograph, a blurry image of Loretta locking up the clinic at night. A second one, Malik Reed Jr. at the playground, his back turned. And one more, a blurry frame of Morgan herself, walking alone from her car. No threats, no words, just silence. Morgan stared at them for a long time. Then she calmly gathered the photos, placed them into a folder, and dialed Sergeant Holden. "Time to turn the cameras on," she said. The new security system chirped quietly as Morgan locked the clinic's doors that evening. Surveillance cameras blinked red in every corner, motion sensors synced with the police precinct nearby, and panic buttons discreetly embedded under desks. But still, her gut churned because fear didn't need doors. It slipped in with every shadow, every unfamiliar car parked too long across the street, every low hum of the phone line when no one spoke on the other end. Loretta had taken Malik Reed Jr. home early that night. Malik Reed Sr. insisted Morgan keep a detail on standby. One of his trusted men, ex-military, now standing across the street pretending to check his phone. But even that didn't settle the storm inside her. She was reviewing patient files in the back office when the alert chimed. Not the motion sensors. The back alley camera. She clicked it open. Grainy at first, but then movement. A man hooded standing still, almost too still. Then he moved toward the side entrance. Morgan's heart kicked. She hit the silent alarm. Police response time was fast, under 5 minutes now, but in 5 minutes, anything could happen. She stepped into the hallway quietly, her white sneakers silent against the linoleum floor, her breath shallow, keys in one hand, phone in the other. She heard the metal door rattle, then a voice. "I wouldn't do that if I were you," came a low growl from the shadows behind her. She spun. It was him, Nathan Voss, no longer in his polished suit, now in a dark jacket, eyes gleaming with something far colder than business. "You broke in?" she asked, stunned. "Not exactly," he said, holding up a key card. His stomach dropped. "How?" He stepped closer. "The thing about legacy institutions, Morgan, is that they're built on layers. And I've been in the foundation longer than you've been alive. You're trespassing. And you're trespassing on history," he snapped. "You think because a few donors wrote you checks and a few cameras liked your face that you belong here?" She backed towards the reception desk, fingers inching under the counter. "This building was going to be turned into condos before your sober story hit the airwaves," Nathan growled. "You hijacked the narrative. You think Malik Reed's going to protect you forever? You're a temporary cause. The minute you become too expensive, too loud, too black, he'll drop you." Morgan didn't flinch. "Are you done?" Nathan tilted his head. "Not yet." He reached into his coat. She hit the panic button. A sharp buzz echoed through the clinic, then a click. Nathan paused. "That was a mistake." "No," Morgan said. "Coming here was your mistake." The sirens wailed in the distance. Close fast, Nathan's face twisted, rage leaking through his veneer. "You think they'll protect you?" He sneered. "You think the police are your friends now? After all this, you still don't get it." "You're a headline, Morgan, not a hero." Morgan stepped fully into the light. "No," she said softly. "I'm the reckoning." 2 squad cars screamed into the lot. Floodlights lit up the windows. The back door clanged as officers rushed in, guns drawn. Nathan tried to move too late. "Hands where I can see them," shouted Sergeant Holden, leading the charge. Nathan hesitated. Bad choice. He was tackled hard to the floor, cuffed, and dragged out before he could sputter a protest. As the officers secured the area, Holden turned to Morgan. "You all right?" She exhaled for the first time in what felt like hours. "I am now." He gave her a slow nod. "We'll process him. Trespassing, harassment, possible conspiracy charges. We'll dig. I promise." By morning, the footage had been leaked. Not by Morgan, not by the cops, by Malik Reed Sr. The video of Nathan breaking in. The audio of his racist tirade. The whole confrontation was posted on Reed Financial's official social media with a simple caption. "We do not protect covers, we protect truth, Etsy." It went viral in less than an hour. Reed Financial's board scrambled. The media tore Nathan Voss apart. Donors rescinded him from every foundation he'd ever sat on. The old guard began to collapse because this time the cameras weren't rolling for a charity gala. They were rolling for justice. Malik Reed Sr. showed up at the clinic with Malik Reed Jr. in tow later that afternoon. Was he scary? The boy asked, clutching Morgan's hand. A little, she said honestly, but I've been through worse. Malik Reed Sr. stepped forward holding a folded paper. She took it, unfolded it. A legal letter, partnership agreement between Alia Morgan and Reed Foundation. Equal ownership, full autonomy, unconditional protection. You don't have to say yes, he said. But I'm not letting you fight alone again. She looked at him, tears threatening, but held back by steel. I never asked for a war, she said. No, Malik Reed replied. But you won it anyway. She smiled. You really know how to pick your battles, only when the woman's worth it. And outside the sun finally broke through the clouds because sometimes justice doesn't arrive with a gavel. Sometimes it kicks in the back door with a camera, a panic button, and a woman who refuses to stay silent. The following Sunday, the clinic was quieter than usual. No appointments, no interviews, no construction noises, just the hum of the HVAC and the soft shuffle of chairs being arranged in a semicircle in the main lobby. Morgan stood in the center, clipboard in hand, wearing jeans, a navy button-up, and her sneakers still marked with a trace of dried paint from the recent renovations. Today wasn't about the press. It wasn't about security threats or legal paperwork. It was about people. Are we ready? She asked Loretta, who was carefully placing a tray of cookies and coffee on a folding table. As we'll ever be, Loretta said, brushing invisible lint from her blouse. Are you sure you want to do this? Morgan nodded. This building wasn't built for me. It was built for them, and they need to know it's theirs, too. Within 15 minutes, the chairs filled with neighbors, community elders, single moms with toddlers, 2 pastors, a retired school nurse, and even a teenage boy Morgan recognized from the gas station down the street. Head always down, hoodie always up. This was the first community listening circle, an idea Loretta had pitched weeks ago. Before people will trust your medicine, she said they have to trust you. So here they were. Morgan stepped forward, voice clear but gentle. Thank you all for coming. I know time is a luxury most of us can't afford. So I'll be brief. This center is yours. Not just in theory and truth. That means if something's not working, if something's missing, if you're afraid to walk through these doors, I need to know. Not later. Not through rumors. Now, an older man raised his hand. My name's Clarence. I was born in this neighborhood in '52. This clinic used to be a jazz club back then. My brother played sax in that very corner. The laughter rolled through the room. Clarence continued. I've seen a lot of buildings come and go. A lot of promises made and broken. So, I guess my question is, how do we know this place won't be just another headline? Morgan nodded slowly because, if it ever becomes that, I'll be the first to tear it down myself. That earned a few murmurs of approval. A woman spoke next. I'm Alicia. I got 2 kids and no insurance. My baby's asthma is acting up and I can't afford another ER bill. Do y'all help with that? Morgan answered without hesitation. We've got a pediatric respiratory program launching next month. Sliding scale. Free inhalers for qualified families. Someone clapped. Then another voice chimed in. What about after-school programs? Safe space for the kids. We're working with the city to fund a weekly tutoring and wellness group, Morgan said. Starting with Saturdays. And if anyone here wants to volunteer, she looked around. Well, make space for you. As the meeting continued, so did the voices. People spoke. Morgan listened, really listened. And then, in the quietest voice from the back row, a small girl asked, Is this where the lady saved the daddy? Morgan turned. The child, no older than 6, had curly hair pulled into 2 puffballs and eyes too wide for someone that young. Yes, Morgan said. That's this place. The girl nodded solemnly. My mummy said you were brave. She said you didn't wait for no one to tell you what was right. My swallowed. Well, she said softly. Sometimes the world makes you wait, and sometimes you just run toward it anyway. Later that evening, after the chairs were stacked and the last cookie eaten, Ma stood alone in the lobby, looking at the corner where Clarence said, jazz once echoed. She imagined the saxophone, the smoke, the laughter, the rhythm of life. Feels alive again, doesn't it? Malik Reed Sr.'s voice broke the quiet. He stepped in, tie loose, sleeves rolled up. She smiled without turning around. It does. He handed her a small box. What's this? Open it. She did. Inside a silver nameplate. Alia Morgan, RN founder and clinical director. Her breath caught. I had it made the day after your interview aired, he said. Took me this long to finally give it to you. I'm not officially a nurse yet, she said. License isn't reinstated, he shrugged. Doesn't change who you are. H. She looked at him, touched in a place she didn't often let anyone near. Thank you. They stood there for a moment, the fluorescent lights buzzing above them like city stars. Then Malik Reed cleared his throat. My mother wants to meet you properly. Morgan turned sharply. Seriously? She says. She owes you an apology. Morgan gave a quiet laugh. She owes me a lot more than that. I told her that. I'll think about it. No rush, Malik Reed said. But I think it matters to her and maybe to you too. Morgan didn't answer right away. Then she said, Invite her to the next listening circle. He blinked. Really? I want her to hear how people live when no one's listening. He smiled. Are you sure you're not running for mayor? She smirked. One crusade at a time. And behind them, the building hummed with a different kind of power, the kind not built by bricks or wires, but by people showing up, telling stories, claiming space. Together, Karen Reed had never been to this part of Florida without a driver or an invitation, and certainly not alone. But today she stepped out of the black town car herself, gloved hands adjusting her purse, spine straight as a yardstick. She wore navy wool, pearls, and a thin hat perched on graying curls, her war uniform for public civility. She looked up at the freshly painted sign, Alia Morgan Community Care Center. Then she exhaled something between dread and pride and walked inside. The reception area smelled faintly of lavender and floor polish. No marble counters, no chandeliers, but it was clean, warm, lived in, and very much alive. Loretta greeted her with a smile that stopped short of friendliness. Mrs. Carter, we've been expecting you. Karen nodded. Thank you. Is Miss Morgan available? She's just finishing with a patient. Loretta gestured to a seating area. Please make yourself comfortable. No. Karen sat stiffly on the edge of a leather chair, eyeing the homemade art on the wall. Crayon drawings by local children. One of them depicted a black woman with a white coat and a cape. She didn't need a label to know who that was. Minutes later, Morgan emerged. She wore light scrubs, her hair tied back, a coffee stain just visible on one sleeve. No theatrics, no ceremonial handshake. She just walked over and sat down across from Karen. I wasn't sure you'd come, Morgan said calmly. I wasn't either, Karen admitted. There was silence, thick, but not aggressive, just dense with history. I watched your interview, Karen said finally twice. I know. I didn't like what I saw, mostly because it showed me myself. Morgan's face remained unreadable. Karen reached into her purse and pulled out a folded piece of paper. This is a letter, she said. Not an apology. You already got that. This is context. Morgan didn't reach for it. I'd rather hear it from you. Karen blinked. Excuse me. You've spent your life speaking through intermediaries, lawyers, assistants, and paper. I want to know if you mean what you came to say. Karen hesitated, then carefully returned the letter to her purse. She folded her hands on her lap. When I saw you over my son's body that night, I saw violence. I saw a threat. I saw something I've been conditioned to fear since before I was old enough to know why. Morgan's jaw tensed. I don't say that for sympathy, Karen continued. I say it because it's the truth. My son was dying, and all I could think was that you were hurting him. Because you looked like someone I was told not to trust, Morgan swallowed. You didn't ask. You didn't even look at your grandson who was begging for me. I failed him, Karen said, her voice smaller now. And I failed you. And I failed the woman I pretended to be for so many years. Another silence. I don't need you to like me, Morgan said. But I do need you to understand something. Hella met her eyes. I wasn't trying to be a hero. I wasn't trying to prove anything. I was just trying to save a life, and that should never have made me a target. Karen's eyes misted, but no tears fell. I was wrong, and I'm trying to unlearn decades of being told I was right. Morgan sat back, exhaled slowly. Unlearning is messy, she said. I know, Karen whispered, but I'm willing. May. There was a pause. Then Morgan stood. I've got a support group meeting in 10 minutes. It's mostly mothers. Some have lost children, some have lost hope. I think you should sit in. Karen blinked. May, if you want to learn, Morgan said. You listen. That's the first step. Karen stood slowly. Do I speak? No, Morgan said with a half smile. Just sit. Just hear them. As they walked together down the hallway, Malik Reed Sr. passed by startled. You actually came? He said to his mother. Karen nodded once, trying something new. Malik Reed looked at Morgan, eyebrows raised. She said nothing, just gave him a look that said, Don't mess this up. That night, Karen sat alone at her vanity. No jewelry, hair down, face bare. She stared at her reflection, then reached into a drawer and pulled out an old photo. Lillian Carter, her daughter-in-law. Morgan reminded her of Lillian. Same fire, same dignity. I see it now, Karen whispered to the photo. I see it now, nearer. Back at the clinic, Morgan sat with Loretta on the front steps sipping chamomile tea. How'd it go? Loretta asked. She listened. That's new. She still has work to do, Morgan said. But don't we all? They both looked up at the night sky, clear, quiet, waiting, because change doesn't always come with a bang. Sometimes it starts in a folding chair, in a listening circle, in a room where no one claps, but everyone hears. Monday morning arrived with a bite in the October air, sharp and unrelenting like the headlines it carried. Morgan's face was on the front page of the Florida Courier, right beneath the headline, Nurse turned advocate or political pawn. New questions arise around Alia Morgan and Reed family ties. She skimmed it once, then again, each sentence a precision strike. Anonymous sources' allegations of financial favoritism claims that Jameson Reed Sr. was using a race narrative to manipulate public perception and buried halfway through. A quote from Nathan Voss's legal team, painting Morgan as emotionally unstable and prone to aggressive behavior, citing her unlicensed practice of emergency care on the night of Mr. Carter's collapse. Morgan set the paper down slowly, hand steady, but her breath betrayed her. They're trying to bury you in paper cuts, Loretta said from across the office. One rumor at a time. Double. I expected it, Morgan murmured. But expecting it doesn't mean it doesn't sting. Morgan looked up. They think if they wear me down enough, I'll make a mistake. Get angry. Lash out. Confirm every stereotype. And what are you going to do instead? She folded the paper and dropped it into the recycling bin. I'm going to build. At Reed Financial's Midtown office, Malik Reed Sr. stood in front of a bank of monitors, each one glowing with network news. His board was unraveling. 3 donors had pulled out of a minority investment fund. His VP of marketing resigned in protest, and a petition calling for his removal had gained 22,000 digital signatures in under 2 days. He turned as Lois Peter, his general counsel, entered with a file in hand, and the look of someone who hadn't slept in 2 days. They're aiming for a full audit, she said flatly. SEC wants to know if there was quid pro quo between your foundation and the clinic. If there wasn't, Malik Reed replied. I know that. You know that. But they don't care about the truth. They care about optics. They want blood. Malik Reed paced slowly. Then we give them truth so loud they can't ignore it. Eloise raised an eyebrow. You're thinking of going public? I'm thinking of calling in every favor I've ever earned in this city. And I'm thinking of standing beside the only woman in this mess who hasn't once lied. She watched him for a long beat. You really believe in her? Mixer? I believe she saved my life, and she's trying to save this city. Eloise cracked a dry smile. That's the most reckless thing you've ever said, and the bravest. Later that afternoon, Morgan met with a lawyer of her own, a woman named Ruth Rhodes. Black, mid-40s, sharp blazer, sharper tongue. You don't owe the media anything, Ruth said, flipping through a packet. But if we want to take control of this narrative, we need to get ahead of it. I don't want to be a symbol, Morgan said. I just want to do my work. Well, unfortunately, you're not the one who gets to decide that anymore. You are a symbol, and that makes you a target. So the question is, do you stand still, or do you own it? Morgan didn't answer immediately. Then she said, I'll speak, but on my terms. Good, Ruth said, because Channel 5 just offered you a live sit-down next week, prime time. Morgan blinked. That soon? Ruth smiled. They smell ratings, but we'll turn it into a reckoning now. That night, Malik Reed Jr. sat curled up on Morgan's clinic couch watching cartoons, a half-eaten grilled cheese on the tray beside him. He looked up as she walked in. Is it true what they said on TV? Morgan knelt beside him. What did they say? They said, You're not a real nurse. She smiled gently. That's not quite true. I am a nurse. I just haven't gotten my license back yet, but I'm working on it. Are you in trouble? Some people want me to be, she said. But being in trouble isn't always the same as being wrong. He thought about that. Daddy says you're brave. She brushed his hair back. So are you. He beamed, then leaned in, whispering like a secret. I'm glad you didn't let my daddy die. Morgan's throat tightened. I am too. The next morning, Ruth sent Morgan a file titled Prepared Questions. Morgan replied with a voice note. No scripts, no filters. If they ask me what happened that night, I'm going to tell them everything, and I'm going to look straight into the camera when I do. Ruth responded with only 3 words. Then let's go, because some stories don't need defending. They just need telling. Tuesday night, prime time, the city paused. At 7:58 p.m., living rooms across Florida dimmed as televisions buzzed to life. Channel 5's logo flashed, followed by a familiar jingle. The segment had been teased all day. Liv, Alia Morgan breaks her silence. Some tuned in out of support, others out of curiosity, a few out of spite. But when the cameras came on, no one looked away. Morgan sat beneath soft studio lighting, a navy blue dress buttoned to the collar, minimal makeup, her hair pulled back into a neat twist, her eyes steady. The host, Bella Monroe, was a respected anchor known for her calm tone and surgical questions. We are joined tonight by Alia Morgan, Bella began, the woman at the center of what has become one of the most talked-about stories in the city, perhaps the nation. Morgan offered a small nod, no smile. Miss Morgan, Bella continued, you've been called a hero, a fraud, a pawn, a symbol. Who do you say you are? Morgan's voice was low, deliberate. I'm a woman who saw a man dying and decided to help. That's who I was that day. That's who I am now. Bella leaned forward. And what would you say to those who claim you were unlicensed, untrained, that you broke protocol? Morgan didn't flinch. I was a licensed nurse for 10 years. I lost that license not because of malpractice, but because I took time off after my mother died. I couldn't afford the recertification process. Life got in the way, but none of that stopped me from knowing how to keep a man breathing when every second mattered. A pause. The camera zoomed in slightly. I didn't have a badge. I didn't have a title, but I had knowledge. I had training. And I had a child pulling on my hand, begging me to save his father. Bella nodded slowly. That child, Jameson Reed, Sr. Jr., has become something of a public figure himself. Some accuse you of using him for publicity. Morgan's jaw tightened. That little boy lost his mother. He almost lost his father. He didn't ask for cameras. He asked for help. And I gave it. She turned this time directly addressing the camera. If I became a symbol, it's because people made me one. But I will not let that be used to erase what really happened that night. I saved a man. I was arrested for it. I was vilified for it, and I was nearly broken by it. Silence filled the studio. Bella let it hang before asking the next question. Miss Morgan, why do you think this story struck such a nerve? Morgan's voice softened, but her words hit harder because people like me aren't supposed to be the hero in other people's stories. We're background. We're suspicious. We're in danger until proven safe. That's what they saw when they looked at me. What did she see? Her voice shook just once. Even as I kept her son alive, Bella leaned in. You're speaking of Karen Reed? Yes. She assumed the worst because that's what the world taught her to expect, and I don't hate her for that, but I won't excuse it either. Another pause. No one in the control room dared move. Bella pressed on. What now? What comes next for Alia Morgan? Morgan glanced down for just a second. I rebuilt, she said. Not because it's easy, but because that little boy still comes to my clinic every Friday with a new drawing. Because a woman came in last week who hadn't seen a doctor in 7 years. Because people are watching and they need to see someone and not back down. Bella's final question was gentle. What would you say to someone out there watching who still doubts your story? Morgan didn't miss a beat. I'd ask them why they doubt it, and then I'd ask them if the roles were reversed. Would they have hesitated to help? And if the answer is yes, then I think we all have bigger questions to answer. Bella turned to camera 2. Alia Morgan, thank you. The broadcast ended at 8:29 p.m. By 8:35, Morgan's name was trending nationwide. Peggy sent her a single message. The world just changed, and you changed it. By 912, Karen Reed's private statement was released to the press. I was wrong. I saw a race where I should have seen mercy. I saw a threat where there was a healer. I judged, and I was humbled. Miss Morgan, you have my apology and my gratitude. At the clinic, Loretta turned off the TV and looked at Morgan, who sat on the couch like her bones had melted. You did it? Loretta whispered. No, Morgan said, voice barely audible. We did. Outside, car horns honked. People clapped on sidewalks. Neighbors lit candles on the clinic steps without being asked. Someone placed a note on the clinic door. 3 words written in block letters. We believe you. Because sometimes the loudest justice isn't shouted from courtrooms. Sometimes it comes from a calm voice, a single interview, and a woman who refuses to disappear. 3 days after the interview, the real storm began not in the form of threats, but consequences. City council chambers overflowed. Protesters filled the steps outside with signs that read, Justice for the helpers. We are not background characters. Care is not a crime. Inside, cameras clicked, phones recorded, and local politicians adjusted their ties nervously. Morgan stood at the podium, a borrowed suit jacket over her blouse, not as a witness, not as a victim, but as a key speaker invited to address the council under public pressure. Her voice, calm as always, cut through the room. I'm not here to ask for your pity. I'm here to demand your memory, because the only reason I'm standing here is that I survived your system. Behind her sat Malik Reed Sr., Ruth Rhodes, and Karen Reed, each of them more alert than ever. Karen sat stiffly, pearls clasped like a lifeline, but she nodded every time Morgan paused. Councilman Ortega shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Miss Morgan, while your story is certainly compelling, we must consider legal precedent. You were, by the state's definition, practicing without a license. Morgan didn't blink. And by any definition, I was saving a man's life. Your system punishes people for being too poor to keep a piece of paper current. That's not about safety. That's about control. A soft murmur of agreement ran through the gallery. Councilwoman Brooks leaned forward. You're proposing a revision of the Good Samaritan law. Yes, Morgan said. And not just for me. For every retired nurse, every EMT off-duty, every midwife, caretaker, and home aide who's been made to feel like they're a liability instead of a lifeline. There was a silence that settled like fog. Then Malik Reed Sr. stood. If I may, I'd like to offer the Reed Foundation's full financial and legal support for this amendment. My life was saved by someone this system would have punished. I intend to correct that. The room buzzed, but Morgan wasn't done. She lifted a sheet of paper, worn, stained, folded 4 times. This is a letter I received anonymously from a woman named Louise, who watched my arrest from her apartment window. She wrote, I've lived in this city my whole life. I've watched people be punished for being kind, for stepping in. I stayed quiet then. I won't anymore. She looked up. We need a city that doesn't make people choose between compassion and survival. We need laws that reflect our values, not our fears. Applause broke despite the rules. Councilman Ortega looked as though he'd swallowed a lemon. By evening, the footage of the council session was trending. Activists nationwide picked up the cause. The phrase, paper doesn't save people, people do, trended for 2 days. But Morgan stayed grounded. At the clinic, she helped a woman fill out Medicaid forms. She sat beside a man shaking from withdrawal. She hugged a teenage girl who showed up after running away. Because while the world spun headlines, healing didn't stop. In a quiet moment, Malik Reed Jr. climbed onto the clinic couch beside her. "Are you going to be famous forever now?" he asked. Morgan smiled. "I hope not." "Why?" "Because I don't want to be known for one moment. I want to be remembered for what comes after." He leaned against her shoulder. "I think you're like Batman." She chuckled. "How's that? You come when people are scared?" She nodded. "Sometimes I'm scared too." He looked up. "But you come anyway." "Yeah," she whispered. "I do." Later that night, Karen Reed returned to the clinic. Not in pearls, not in heels, in a cardigan and sneakers. She sat on the front steps next to Lane. "You were hard on her," Loretta said without looking up. "I was wrong about her," Karen admitted. "About a lot of things." Karen nodded it. "I want to help," she said quietly. "Not with my name on plaques. Just help." Loretta sipped her tea. "Then start by showing up. Keep showing up." "I will," Karen whispered. And for the first time in a long time, she meant it. The bill Morgan proposed passed its first committee review by unanimous vote. There was more work ahead, more resistance to face, but the door was open. Not for her alone. For every unseen hand that steadied a shoulder, every voice told to stay silent, every life touched in ways laws couldn't measure. Because justice doesn't always start in courtrooms. Sometimes it starts with someone who refuses to walk away. It was a chilly Sunday morning in December when Morgan returned to the same intersection where it all began, 3rd and Hollis. The street still bore the faint memory of skid marks. The old cracked sidewalk hadn't changed, but Morgan had. She parked the car, stepped out, and crossed to the exact patch of pavement where Jameson Reed Sr. had collapsed months before, where her hands, guided by instinct, training, and mercy, had fought for his breath before anyone asked who she was. And now this corner has changed, too. A new sign was bolted to a pole nearby, Aaliyah Morgan Way, dedicated to those who act without hesitation. Beneath it, a modest plaque embedded in the concrete in honor of all who serve before their ask, who heal without permission. Morgan stood still, letting the cold air brush her face. She wasn't here for the ceremony. There was no crowd, no press, just memory. Behind her, quiet footsteps approached. "Didn't think you'd come," Malik Reed Sr. said gently, hands in his coat pockets. "I almost didn't," Morgan replied. They stood in silence for a while. "I used to drive past this intersection every week and never saw anything," Malik Reed murmured. "Now I see everything, Mel." Morgan looked at him. "That's the problem, Malik Reed. You had to almost die to start seeing." "I know," he said, "but I'm awake now. That has to count for something." She nodded. "It does." A cat beat past. "Are you still working on the new satellite clinic?" he asked. "Groundbreaking is next month," Morgan said. "South Side, closer to the neighborhoods they forgot." "I'll be there." She gave a small smile. "You'll be one of many. Exactly how it should be." They stood a little longer, the city beginning to stir behind them, church bells ringing in the distance. A woman walked by with 2 small children in matching coats. She smiled at Morgan. The younger of the 2 whispered, "That's her." Morgan turned. "Hi there," the girl waved shyly. "Thank you for helping people." Morgan crouched to her level. "That's what we do. We help each other." That afternoon, the final piece of the puzzle clicked into place. Her nursing license, fully reinstated, arrived in the mail. No grand moment, no parade. Just a plain white envelope, postmarked from the state board. She held the paper in her hands for a long time. It didn't make her a nurse again. She'd never stopped being one. But now she didn't have to fight for the right to be seen. She pinned it on the clinic wall next to drawings, photos. A photo of Malik Reed Jr. holding a stuffed raccoon and grinning wide. Loretta stood nearby, arms crossed. "Feels like the ending," she said. "No," Morgan answered, stepping back. "Feels like the beginning." Months later, the clinic was thriving. The waiting room was rarely empty. The after-school program had 36 kids. The city passed the revised Good Samaritan Protection Law, nicknamed unofficially as Morgan's Clause. Karen Reed showed up every Friday with warm biscuits and a notebook full of suggestions, most of them reasonable. And Morgan walked the halls every day, clipboard in hand, voice calm, heart steady. One evening, as she locked up the clinic, Malik Reed Jr. ran up with a picture he drew in school. It was a Morgan Cape stethoscope smile. "You made me the hero again," she teased. He shook his head. "No, this time I made you the mayor," she laughed. "I think one revolution at a time is enough." "Okay," he grinned. "But if you change your mind, I'll make posters." That night, Morgan sat alone in her apartment. She poured a cup of tea, opened her journal, and wrote, "There will always be another fire, another fight, another silence to break. But I am not alone anymore. This city doesn't just know my name, it knows what I stand for, and I will keep standing, no matter how loud the noise, how sharp the knives, how long the shadows, because someone has to, because someone did that for me once. Because justice never sleeps, and neither will I." She closed the journal. Outside, the city breathed alive, watchful, awake, and Alia Morgan, nurse, advocate, survivor, fighter, rested for now because tomorrow she'd rise again. The world would try her again, and she would answer, as always, present. This story reminds us that true justice begins with ordinary courage. Alia Morgan didn't have power, status, or permission, but she had compassion, and that was enough to save a life and challenge a broken system. In a world that often punishes those who step out of line for the right reasons, her story teaches us that silence is not safe, and doing the right thing is rarely convenient. But when one person dares to act with integrity, they light a path for others. Because sometimes the quietest heroes make the loudest,